Welcome back. Happy Veterans Day. A little story time this episode. If you've been to the I Refuse podcast, you should know that this will be unlike any other story you've heard from another veteran. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. This is Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. I'm back again. Happy Veterans Day to my fellow veterans that have served, those that are currently in service, and those that continue to serve in the community and whatnot as veterans. My experience is a little atypical, and I felt, where else could I go to tell my story but on the I Refuse podcast, right? So picture it. The year's 2000. I am 17 years old. I am about to graduate from high school. And around that time, I wasn't even thinking about it. But somehow or another, I crossed paths with a recruiter. Living in Baltimore at the time, I was kind of good friends with this white girl. And somehow or another, we ended up in the same recruiter's office down on, Frederick Road. And he made a visit to my mom's place. And on the table, he was like, making a good point to try to sell me and my mom on, the benefits of the Air Force. I, like so many of y'all, I don't know if they still have the commercials around these days, but they were running the Air Force commercials and the military commercials heavy back in like the early 90s. In the early 90s, my brother served in the Army for about 2 years, before, during, and after the Persian Gulf War. And their slogan, I think, at that time was aim high. They had the bumper stickers, they had the commercial, had you thinking, oh, you enlist and you'll be flying planes in no time. Air Force had their commercials for a little bit. Recruiter came over to the apartment and was like, they offer you college. I was like, I want to go to college. I definitely didn't want to stay around here. So I was like, okay. Within months, I was down at his office, and I got a choice to pick when I wanted to actually enlist and leave. I was like, okay, I'll leave. I'll enlist August 1. And by that point, went to MEPS, did the whole hand up, recite the whole thing, the defend the Constitution, yada, 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 yada. And then I was shipped off with a bunch of other people to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And I knew going in that it was their job to yell at me. Like, my recruiter prepared me for everything. Going in, he's like, look, when you go down there, just remember it's their job to yell at you, and you just got to make it through the 6 weeks. I don't know what other people's recruiter told them, but by week, by week 3 or 4, some people started to crack within my flight. So there was a situation that happened, and looking back, I don't know how we didn't see this coming. So the way it worked out was we had two bays in a barracks. Like we had a larger area behind a secured door that was, I think, on the top floor. And then in this larger room were two bays, two or so rows in each bay of beds. And our entire flight was made up of about 4 rows altogether. So roughly about somewhere between 25, 30 guys. Think of how the barracks were laid out in Full Metal Jacket. That's how it was. There was no privacy. There was literally dudes all around you, whether you were awake, asleep, showered, the whole thing. Now, each row had a guy at the end that was kind of like the leader of that row. So there were like 4 guys that were kind of put in, I guess, leadership roles to kind of get us together, keep us focused, or whatever. One of those 4 guys, there was just something about him that he was just a little too tight. Like, he didn't, he had a really strong country accent, wore glasses, just didn't like have any kind of personality. It was just like, and even down to the way that he talked, it was like, this is kind of odd. Like, other guys were a little loose and a little fun, and there were some guys that took it very, very seriously. But this guy, even down to the movements of his face when he talked and how his eyes moved, I was like, okay. He almost like talked through a tight face. Didn't have like, it was just something real strange. So anyway, we did about 3 or 4 weeks. The first couple of weeks, you're kind of treated like shit. Maybe week 3 or week 4, you start to do classroom stuff. Now, the idea is that during the course of the 6 weeks, the tech sergeants, the staff sergeant, and the instructors and stuff start to respect you a little bit more. Thus, they start showing up less. You start to become feeling more independent, but you still had some stuff in place. Like, you couldn't just roam around the base as freely as you wanted. So we started doing the classroom stuff. We started to feel more at ease and more at home. So I remember we all went to bed one night. Nothing out of place, nothing crazy, nothing during the day before that was like, huh. I woke up, and there were about 6 beds empty. It's like, what the fuck? And nobody else really said anything. And we were just like past the midway point. So we were kind of like feeling good, connecting a little bit better, keeping on top of stuff. So we were just like, what the fuck happened? So apparently, this guy in the glasses had an episode while we were asleep. They said that this guy flipped out, and this is all while we're asleep, which still kind of fucks me up. Flipped out, started attacking people in the back of the bay. So the back of my side. was attacking 3 or 4 other guys, was flipping the beds and shit, was like destroying shit, knocking lockers over, all kinds of stuff. It got so bad that they had the sirens going, they pressed the button, they had like military police and other technical instructors up there. It took like a good 8 or 9 people to physically like carry this dude out of the barracks while we were asleep. How the fuck I slept through that, I honestly cannot tell you. Cause I was a pretty light sleeper. But I also think the stress kind of made me sleep heavier. Um, and never saw that guy again. Never heard anything more. Never heard what became of him, if he was like kicked out of the. But you just never know. You just never know. Everybody else, the 25 or 30-ish guys that were over there, were cool. Some guys were pretty interesting and funny. Like this one guy, a couple of beds over, tried to convince us that these panties that he had in this envelope were from his girl back home. I was like, bitch, you bought those from the commissary. Stop playing. And you know, other guys had like quirks and stuff and were pretty interesting. Some people had like short tempers, but they were like all of about 5'1", so it was like, you're totally unserious right now with the bullshit. What else? Around that time, Big Pun's album had just came out, the one that was released after he passed away. And there was a song on there called I'm Laughing at You. That shit was so annoying. So, of course, I was annoying with that. What else? You would hear stories about. So, everybody had to chip in around the bay to like clean it and stuff like that. But there were also other responsibilities that were on one particular person, and that was like a security detail. Security detail is where you had to stand behind the one door that people would have to come through to get into your barracks or your bay area or whatever. Any person you spoke to feared having that position because of the stories they've heard. Stories of, oh, well, did you hear about that one time? You know, what happened to that one kid that was on this detail? Apparently, he had pissed off one of the instructors so bad that the instructor punched through the glass in the door and got the kid by the neck. I was like, oh, hell. God forbid. And on top of that, there would be little tricks you'd have to look out for with some of these tech sergeants. Having fake ID cards, signatures, names. Like there was a staff sergeant or a tech sergeant at that time that was walking around with, it looked at first glance like a real military ID card, but the name of the signature said Mickey Mouse. He even had it down to his face, it being his face in the ID card, but the name clearly was not his. You had to cross-reference the information on the ID card, of course, with the face and, you know, all that stuff, to the list of authorized people allowed in your barracks. First time I was put in that detail, I fucked up. So when you fuck up on that, you are instantly recycled, which means you have to do you're held back another week, but you're also reassigned to a different flight. That happened to me. So I was there a week longer. I was shipped to another flight. Um, and then there was Warrior Week. That's where you had to put all your shit in the large green duffel bag that you had to carry on your back. We had to walk as a flight from the front of the base to the very back in a simulated mock desert area, like tents, the whole shebang. And you were away from the cafeteria and the commissary, and you had to eat out of the MREs. Nobody wanted the ham. That was the wackest one. The crackers were dry as hell. The best one, the best MRE was, they didn't have meatloaf, but there was one that was, I think, like Chinese food or something like that. The peanut butter one was cool. Um, and nobody really wanted to fuck with the MRE where you had to cook the meat. But we didn't have the same Warrior Week experience that other people did. Like, we weren't able to do the obstacle course because it was raining the couple of days. But the idea is to simulate experience in another country during wartime. Um, I came and went. The final week, you're in blues, and the instructors don't fuck with you. Like, you made it through Warrior Week, you made it through the other 4 or 5 weeks. You're in blues now. You're looking good. They treat you like equals. They don't antagonize you when you walk past their table. They don't fuck with you during PT. They pretty much leave you alone the rest of the week. And, the end of the Warrior Week is when they have like a ceremony where they give you the Air Force coin. So you're technically an airman now. So you go through that, and then, you already have your orders for where your permanent duty station is. I didn't get a glamorous place. I didn't even get stationed to another state. I was stationed literally 2 or 3 hours north in Texas at Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene. I got to go home though for Christmas, I think. No, Thanksgiving. I got to go home for Thanksgiving. Um, but after basic training, you go to technical school to learn about your job, which is another 6 or 7 weeks. I got sent to Biloxi, Mississippi. I was there from October of 2000 until roughly like November, December. Base was all right. Not basic training style, but you definitely had to report to some people if you were acting up. So the buildings itself very much gave jailhouse. White concrete, bathroom type of linoleum tile floors. Cold. It wasn't that bad as far as the weather. About 6 or 7 weeks, 5 to 6 blocks of learning. Had class at night. We had this one instructor, totally unserious. Like, you can't be for real right now, lady. Was always late to class. but made it a point if your grades started to slip to report you to her boss. And it was so stupid because it's like, I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't beat kids, I don't smoke. Something in this equation is not helping. And it's not me. Like, you got to sit in here for 3 or 4 hours. That's including the wait time that we have waiting for your ass to appear to teach your own class. And they kept telling us towards block three, oh, block three and block four are the hardest, if you don't, And a lot of people in her class, the average was about a C. Yet, for some reason, I was the one that was sent to her boss's office, and he was an asshole. Like, you would have thought I slept with his wife or something, the way he was acting. So, needless to say, I did get like a 60 on the final exam of, I think, block three or block four. But I got like average of a B leading up to that. But because I got a 60 or a 65, you would have thought Pearl Harbor happened. But it was funny because all throughout those 6 weeks, that bitch was late and totally not there. Like, she was at the podium and stuff, but she was clearly thinking about her badass kids. Outside of her, though, all the other instructors was cool. A couple of the guys from the other classes came down to kick it with us. And around that time, Mystical's album had just came out. So, and Shake Your Ass was real big. So we would cut up about that. I did all the assignments pretty well. The class itself, we got pretty tight. We were hanging out, outside of class. But bitch, just when you think things are going well in the dorm, and I should have known. So, in our large dormitory, all guys, about 3 or 4 floors of nothing but guys, right? And we were there different weeks, different specialty codes, job specialties. Not everybody was there just for 7 weeks. So interesting mix. A couple of guys on the opposite wing of the building. Really aggressive, really moody, big dudes, some scrawny or whatever. I remember one time down at the dining hall, and this was also the season that I was into peach cobbler, real heavy, and I used to eat the peach cobbler just about 4 times a week. I was getting chunky, because I had some good ass food. I remember one time I was sitting next to a couple of the guys from my dorm, right? And we were just, ripping on each other back and forth. I'd said something about, well, I bet your wife would disagree. Didn't direct that to anybody at the other table specifically. But this white guy, probably about 3 or 4 years older than me, turned around, eyes about this big, eyebrows like this, was like, don't you say another thing about my fucking wife. I don't know this dude. And I'll tell you in a minute why I'm bringing this up. I didn't know this guy. Didn't know anything. Didn't even know he was married. But the look on his face was real crazy. Like he was on something. Fast forward. So around that same time, we had a lot of liberties compared to basic training, meaning we can go off base as much as we want. We can roam the base. Um, they had like a system in place. You had to qualify with a specific runtime to get a certain color card. Like everybody started off with like a white card, which there were no privileges, but as it went from white to yellow, there were like a couple of privileges, and then from yellow to green, green to blue, and blue to red, or something like that. So that last card, you can pretty much stay out as late as you want. You don't, you can like stay out overnight or some shit like that. So my ass never able to just like beat the runtime, never made it past yellow. No big deal. But as we started to venture off base, I became pretty familiar with the adult store that was right off base. Adult store, viewing booth, magazines. So within a couple of weeks, I had a stack of magazines that probably would have got me kicked out of the Air Force. Kept these magazines in a brown paper handbag. Kept them in my clothes closet in my dorm room that I shared with another guy. This other guy, straight, last name Shannon, one definitely a comes from an Air Force family. Dad at the time, chief chief master sergeant somewhere. Even with all of that, couldn't quite get himself up every morning. Of all the people I could have roomed with, I roomed with somebody that required not one alarm clock, not two alarm clocks, but three alarm clocks. So anytime you walked into our dorm room, it was essentially, like I said, brick, white, painted brick, cold ass linoleum floors, and it's basically two beds, same like bunk bed style, but they were just side by side, but they were across the room from each other. You come into our room, his side, bed surrounded by alarm clocks. And I'm like, this should be studied. He would we would have to get up every morning early, um, do our PT, of course. He swears that he was so serious about the Air Force, and he showed it whenever he couldn't get up with these three alarm clocks and get pissed at me for not waking him up. Um, do you see the words Casio written across my head, sucker? Like he would come down the hallway in his high pitched voice, so pissed that I didn't wake him up. And he became real buddy buddy with this guy across the hallway. This fucking goofy ass dude. Um, so he didn't care who was around. He'd be passive aggressive about it too. And I'm like, it's not my responsibility. Like maybe if we were on an assignment together in the Middle East and we were assigned to the same shit, but you really should get control of that. You have three alarm clocks. Your ass is still asleep after the third alarm clock. Like I already did the buddy thing in Warrior Week with this guy named Pogar. Now the situation goes, you're assigned a buddy. And clearly I didn't have a say in the choice. You guys are responsible for each other. It's like a wingman or something. If either one of y'all has to get up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, you have to wake the other person up. And you can't go anywhere. You can't even leave until this person gets dressed. So imagine week 5, I know I'm going back. Week 5 of Warrior Week. My wingman is Pogar. Pogar looks like Freddy Krueger, but in human form a little bit. Like, I have to go to the bathroom really bad. It is 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't simply just dart out to the bathroom. I'm all fully dressed. I've waken your ass up. You are taking forever to get dressed. I'm like, Pogar, like, I'm doing the PP dance over here. Bruh, can we get going? Please, can we, like... By the time he had one sock on his foot, I peed myself. And by this point, some people are awake and I think pretending to sleep, because the rest of the time, what was the key catchphrase that everybody loved? Man, I hate fucking Pogar, because that's what I said. Well, shit, I don't have to go now. You can get right back in bed. Because I just went to the bathroom with myself. And I fucking hate you, Pogar. Anyway, here at the Art Fuse Podcast, I'm known to go off. Back to tech school. Now, remember, I told you about the guy in the dining hall that the look on his face from simply joking back and forth with other people at his table, the look on his face, I'll never forget it. And I'm like, what the fuck? So by this time, we're probably like 3 weeks in. And up to this time, things was okay. Things was cool. You know, we knew about the instructor that we had in our class. She wasn't taking it seriously, but got upset if she thought you weren't taking it seriously. You know, the major that was over the tech school was chill and cool, had Thanksgiving dinner with his family, got to venture out off base and eat good, and became really good friends with some folks. One night, I think it was like a Friday or something, I was coming back to the dormitories, and there are like military police. There are about 5 or 6 tech sergeants going down the hall with cereal boxes, open cereal boxes at both ends. Like, it's crazy mayhem all over the place. And they're like telling us to like vacate the dormitory and get information on the basketball court and all this other stuff. So I lean over to the guy to my left and I'm like, the fuck is going on? He said they're doing a drug raid of the dormitories. So by that point, the first thing that popped in my head was my bag of porn magazines. Because I'm like, oh, if they go through our room and go into my closet and see that I have same-sex magazines. I'm like 18 years old. I haven't even made it to the 2-year mark of my enlistment. They could very well send me packing back home with no veterans preference, none of that. Like, none of the privileges or the benefits and stuff. So I went full Sonic the Hedgehog mode. went back to my dorm room as they're at the other in the other wing, kind of doing their raid and stuff. And I put my bag in the ceiling of the bathroom, push-up towels, and put it in the ceiling over one of the showers, and went back outside. Needless to say, they never found it. But what they did find when they did the raid on the other wing, I don't even think they even came to our side. They found machetes. They found kilos of cocaine. They found grams of weed. Like, this isn't one like small shit. This is like almost like drug cartel smuggling level type shit. They found all kinds of contraband on that side. And I think the guy from the dining hall story that I told you earlier was like a main drug dealer. He was dealing drugs on the side, and that's how he was making a good amount of money from it. And looking back, going around on that side, on that wing of the building, they had some of the stuff in these guys' rooms. Like, they had it pretty much decked out like an apartment. Bikes and sofas and like pictures and shit. And I'm thinking to myself, how long are y'all going to be here? Now I know where they got the money for all this shit. Like, crazy. They never found me back though. So I was able to relieve stress when I could. Those last 3 or 4 weeks. Very interesting time nonetheless. Outside of class, we had the drug raid. I had another guy with my last name who physically looked like the polar opposite of me. I'm tall, I'm black, I have no blemishes on my face. This guy, short, white, bowl haircut, very pimply, very dehydrated looking in the face, and high key annoying, right? His last name was also Clark. My last name was also Clark. Spelled the exact same way for both of us. The way he ran, the way he talked, he just, it, totally, none of us took him seriously, right? Like, I'm trying to figure out how to set this up. All right, so the way we got around on base as a group is we caught the bus, and it pretty much was a loop. And I remember we were on the bus stop with this guy, with this kid, and we were trying to go to I think the commissary or the store or something. I don't remember what the fuck we were talking about, but he popped up, and the way he popped up off of this bench and ran into the street, like he ran like this, and he was already short, so the shit was already funny as fuck. He was just a character. As time went on, we would have these incidences as we crossed paths with each other, where for some reason I became his target. Now, I don't know this dude. Like, he probably got sick of me laughing with the other people at him. It was never with him. Because he had this voice that was whiny and high pitched. Very, very pimply, had the bowl haircut, like I said, looked real crazy in the face. Couldn't you couldn't have dreamed or had a nightmare of a person. Like he just was very interesting. Um, and at this point, he probably couldn't help it. But as time went on, we had like these situations where he was aggressive towards me and annoying, but I took all of it as unserious as it was because, dude, I could literally kick you across the base. But he would just try me, you know what I mean? So there was that. There was one incident where I was in somebody's dorm room and minding my business, and he came in and tackled me. So I'm on the bed, and he has me like this, right, like right here, and he's like trying to like he kept doing this to me, and my back kept hitting the wall, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like he's trying to like I guess tackle me, and people are walking past in the hallway, and I'm like, can you please get this fool off of me? They're like nothing. Like I don't think he was wrapped too tight, but it was funny. So that there was that. Then there was this one time, right? I'm in the bathroom on my floor, the first floor, opposite wing, opposite end of the building, looking at one of my magazines, and I got a little turned on. I'm sitting there, I look up, probably like halfway through. I look up and I see an eyeball. I see an eyeball like through the crack of the stall on the other side of the door. No sooner after that did I see this person look like they were doing something in this direction, right? Next thing you know, I am soaked with, I hope was water, a bucket of water, and he runs off. It was that motherfucker. So by week 5, still unserious, still funny to me. I we all like labeled him as Evil Clark. And one of the assignments we had to do in class was to make a PowerPoint presentation. This is my first time ever. Everybody else had probably like a good 10 PowerPoints. My extra ass had 100 slides. And one was, it was essentially like making fun of everybody in the class, but also sharing my experience being in tech school and outside of the class and stuff. So I had a couple of slides dedicated to this situation, this experience with this guy. Good Clark, evil Clark. And just as soon as we had those experiences, that was that. So 5 or 6 weeks, got to see my second or third drug raid. Probably like a third of the building was gone. Things kind of changed to where you didn't see a lot of people anymore. And then I went to my permanent duty station. Probably going to do this in about 15 minutes. Got to Dyess Air Force Base. Let's see, December of 2000. Started working at the NPF, which is the base military personnel flight, which is the main building. People come to get their IDs, people come to add stuff to their records, whole thing. Meanwhile, probably not even less than 6 months there, the one sergeant in charge of the administration office where I was working got an assignment someplace else. So me and another girl were left in under the leadership of a person similar in rank to her. So I had, I think, my first Air Force stripe. They both had two. He, you know, took the last office with the door while she and I were in the main office. She and I were doing all the work. He was getting the credit. All he did was sit there. I remember this time that, they had a wall in near the side entrance called it was the Airman of the Month wall. 12 months, a picture of the airman to each month. Do you know, out of all the airmen in the entire flight, the entire squadron, he got Airman of the Month twice in 1 year. And when you look at the wall, his both of his pictures are right over each other. So, like, I think he got it in March, and then 6 months later, he got it again in like November or something like that. Both of his pictures, one right under each other. We're doing all the work. So naturally, I didn't know much about this dude. When I got to the office for the first time, he was on an assignment somewhere else. First time he came back, when he came back, as time went on, what I saw of this dude wasn't much. Again, another person to me couldn't really take seriously. Me, do my 8 to 4 or whatever, the 9 to 5 or shit. Do my work, don't bother anybody. Showcase what I was taught. Computer stuff, help desk stuff. Don't bother anybody. But yet and still, as is the case in any office environment, there is some drama. Um, by that time, I became really good friends with two other black people. There weren't that many of us in there. Um, Downstairs, these two girls met in, I think, tech school, so they were already cool by the time I came into the picture. One girl was in the ID office, the other girl was down in awards and decorations or something. At some point, we became really buddy buddy. She, the one in awards and decorations, um, took no shit. From the DC area, um, wasn't one to be played with, but knew the ins and outs, right? Long story short, none of them saw it for this guy. He tried to, I guess, assert some kind of control or whatever over the two of us, me and this other girl. Other girls from Panama, funny as fuck. Um, didn't really pay him any mind. I didn't either. Word got around that this third guy, the guy in the back office, was talking shit about some of the girls downstairs, which is kind of brainless because it's like, we don't bother you. We don't talk about you. We don't discuss you. You are not a topic of conversation. Yeah, why are you talking all this shit? Now, mind you, I think at some point after that, I was kind of going through some bass drum that was coming in my direction. Long story short, she came all the way upstairs, stepped to him in his office, and got his ass together. He ran out like the little punk bitch that he was. But there was all kinds of stupid shit happening. I called it a bomb threat. Some people were upset that I did. The lady with the brown teeth, when she got wind of what I said over the phone to these people, that the bag was smelling kind of fruity, she said to somebody else, and they got back to me. She was like, "You sure it wasn't you that was smelling fruity?" I was like, okay. That's funny. So we had an asshole of a major who made it a point to, I guess, make an example out of me because I guess I wasn't up to the standard of the Air Force. I came by the office one day. It was BDU day. Had my BDUs on. Had a black shirt on underneath. Decided to just pop in. And we had already had a previous incident. Decided to pop in. It was me and the girl from Panama in the office. Brian wasn't there. Decided to call me to stand in front of him. And he did like a uniform check. Mind you, we're not in basic training. Took a glance over the back, the sides, took a glance over the front. Before you knew it, he unbuttoned my shirt. Saw that there was a graphic on the shirt and decided to undo my pants and my belt in public. Being the asshole, arrogant person that he was, said a couple of things about the shirt and then walked out and walked down the hall. I felt like that was a complaint or a grievance that I need to file. So I went over to the MEO office. The guy in the office, after I ran the incident by him, essentially worked his ass off in convincing me not to file it. Because unfortunately, it being so political in nature, filing a grievance against an officer or an executive can lead one to have a stain or, work and get around. And I'm thinking to myself, isn't this shit anonymous? Needless to say, I didn't file anything. But then, the visits to his office and the coaching sessions or whatever kind of stopped. And, the karma did catch up to him because he was also going through some severe back problems. So severe that he had to lay on his floor in his office for hours at a time. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm glad I didn't. And I kind of felt like maybe I had some superpower or whatever. But they started targeting us at work anyway. Because they don't like when we speak our minds. And we jokingly would say amongst ourselves, oh, they probably just walk from office to office and count how many black people are in the office and say we gotta go. You had some people around there that would tell their bosses all their business. And I'm just like, why? Your boss is not your friend. So I was there at that base for about 2 or 3 years. Wasn't progressing or being recognized over there. Got reassigned to another place that handles all the mail, which was nothing but a big ass house party. Then went to another place where I was more of in like a leadership role. It was chill at first. Master Sergeant retired. Became real cool friends with my immediate supervisor. Um, at some point, she left, and there was a senior master sergeant that came in, deeply religious, from Alabama. Looking back, this motherfucker did look like Norbit with a high top fade. Um, Super serious. Hated when you cussed around him. He told you not to cuss. Him and his wife were very strange in a way. Very, very strange. Super nice guy. Um, at that point, I was doing all of the computer support for the entire building. Wasn't getting recognized for it. Didn't seek to get recognized for it. Um, it took a master sergeant in the orderly office to put me in the running for some awards. And I got a couple of awards. Um, there was a tech sergeant that was reassigned over to our building, not in any capacity with what I was doing. But me and this guy had a couple of I wouldn't say run-ins, but another asshole in my mess. Now, mind you, he didn't have any other airmen under him. He was literally relegated to a conference room in the building where it was just him in this room. I'm in charge of running all the computers, making sure they in the entire building. We were in the same career field. You're in this conference room with probably one or two functioning lights. I'm doing the computer and office administration for the entire building on my own. Yeah, every once in a while he would insert himself. Not in any way to assist, but to prove a point. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy's deal? And you know how some people have a way or an approach that is just not conducive, and it's really not in good taste or good etiquette to push back on that. Because even though you know it's not how you reach people. And he would pull other tech sergeants into the conversation, like from my office, and I'm like, okay. She's standing there looking confused, like, what the fuck is going on? He pulled her in, a person of similar rank, I guess, as a witness. And I'm standing there like, what? Like, you're pulling me away from running this whole entire building on my own to do what exactly? Never once did he, like, think, oh, well, maybe this guy needs help. Maybe I can mentor this guy. You pull me into this dark ass conference room for what? So at some point, I had to change all the workstation names over for every computer in this building on my own by a certain month, date, and time, like 6 months out. For whatever reason, the deadline had skipped my mind. It was like 6 months had passed. It was just me at this point. So people started to lose network connectivity. Guess who decided to pop up? This dude. And not only did he pop up out of nowhere, he decides he wants to escalate his shenanigans. Pulled me into the office of my captain, said that he put in a recommendation for me to lose my 5 level. And by that point, I was in the middle of another project. But he had to make a scene. He had to prove a point. Okay. But I never did lose my 5 level. And this guy never helped me out at all. But every incident, he was pissed off at me about something. He didn't show up any other time, but to have an issue, to be like, I'm tired of doing your work and doing your shit. I didn't even know you were helping. Didn't even know you were existing. But see, that one time got him in trouble with the squadron master sergeant, and he ultimately came back around to apologize. Like, what are you doing, dude? You know what I mean? So, totally unserious. I had one incident, and it wasn't even really an incident. Didn't have much drama. It wasn't like a drama-filled kind of 3 years, but there was an incident. I was at my office one day, at my desk, doing something on my computer. I get a phone call, and there's a voice on the other end, somewhat hostile, mad at me for something. Voice is not familiar to me. He introduces himself, tells me to stay away from such and such. I don't know who the fuck he was talking about. He was like, stay away from this guy. He doesn't like you. He doesn't want you. He doesn't whatever, whatever, whatever. I'm like, okay. He introduces himself again at the end of the phone call, and I wrote it down incorrectly. But I took it to my senior master sergeant, like, okay. So I'm at the dining hall. Like I always go down to the dining hall. We had a really nice dining hall. I had a kitchen. And got my food, was sitting down at the table watching TV. Guy walks by, comes back, and comes to my table. So this guy was somebody I saw at like a housewarming party a couple weeks ago for a guy that worked in his orderly room, who I think was family. So, we were both at this housewarming party with probably about 8 or 9 other people. I'm having a good time. He's over there with his people. I go over there to introduce myself to people. We're talking, having a good time. No big deal. Fast forward, the phone call from this guy. Like, okay. Fast forward a little bit later, in the dining hall, this guy that was at the housewarming party, I guess this is who the guy on the phone was referring to, comes to my table. It was at that moment I put 2 and 2 together, and I told him what this guy did. Mind you, never met this other guy. Don't even really know this guy. And he was like trying to justify and all this other shit. I'm like, okay, whatever. Fast forward, when I went in 2019 to San Antonio to watch old girl from the ID office that I was talking about earlier, she retired. She decided to stay in and do her 20 or so years. I think she did like 20, a little over 20 years. And while I'm there, I run into other people we used to work with, including the girl that was from Panama that I worked with. And we had kept in touch a little bit here and there. Anyway, while I was there in San Antonio, the three of us went out for dinner. And we were reminiscing, and I had told them the same story. So the girl from Panama, who was really tight with the guy that was at the housewarming party, told me that the reason why this third guy called me is because he wanted this guy. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. A bitch just can't be cute and go somewhere. So I'll leave y'all with this. That 3 or 4 years definitely opened my eyes to the kind of world that we live in, and the kind of, the insecurities, the measures that people go to exert some kind of power control over someone and fill the room or people's heads with some kind of idea, some bullshit that's not even there. I get up, I go to work, I do my 8 hours, and I leave. Go to my little dorm room. Didn't have a car until 2003. Did my whatever. I left everybody to speculate, whatever. And I realized that when people are in your business and making a big deal about what they think is going on, they really just want to trade places with the person in the equation. Like, you really took time out of your day to call a complete stranger? I'm not thinking about either one of y'all. But that's the kind of shit that happens still to this day. And it has nothing to do with how you identify or what you do in this world. It's actually down to the person. And they're everywhere. So, happy Veterans Day. I served 4 years in the Air Force. I don't regret a single day. Met some really interesting characters. Never once got in trouble. There was some drama. I have no control over that. But it definitely taught me a lot, and I learned a lot about people. And I still have those kind of people to this day. And they're in the community. Very, very funny looking back. Like, who would have thought? Who would have fucking thought? It's Mr. Vossi, I Refuse podcast. Happy Veterans Day, like I said. Continue to support and follow the I Refuse podcast. And I will catch you guys later. Peace. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.